The Yemeni missiles and drones have been extremely effective, and Iranian missiles and drones have also demonstrated remarkable effectiveness. A lot of these American bases are already well known to the Iranians, and Iran has many people across the region providing information. There are people cooperating with Iran throughout the Persian Gulf, in Jordan, and elsewhere. When Americans are despised by so many people in the region, you are naturally going to have people willing to help the Iranians. There should be no doubt about that. The same applies to Yemen. The Iranians are not afraid or intimidated. If the Americans decide to carry out a heavy strike using everything they have, Iran will respond using everything it has. They could destroy infrastructure across the Persian Gulf region, and that would have consequences far beyond the battlefield. It could bring about a collapse in global markets, including the American stock and bond markets. There would be panic because people would suddenly realize that the global economy had hit a wall, and the Americans should understand that Iran is not going to back down. During the previous war, Trump repeatedly threatened to obliterate Iran and send it back to the Stone Age. Iran did not budge. So why would anyone believe that Iran would surrender now, especially when its capabilities have become stronger? The same lesson applies to Yemen. The Yemeni resistance has developed its own technology, including missiles and drones, and it has shown that it can strike important targets. The experience Iran has gained over years of conflict has also provided lessons about missiles, drones, underground facilities, and methods of protecting military infrastructure. The Yemeni resistance has developed considerably over time. Yemen is full of intelligent and educated people, and with Iranian support, they have built their own defense capabilities. Their missiles and drones gradually became capable of striking Saudi oil installations, and they hit them hard enough to force the Saudis into a ceasefire. But after the ceasefire, the siege on Yemen continued, and in recent years it became even more severe. The Yemeni people became increasingly angry about the killing of civilians and the continuing blockade. When Saudi Arabia attacks Yemen again, it gives the Yemenis every reason to respond. This is also a particularly vulnerable moment for Saudi Arabia because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The Saudis cannot rely on the Persian Gulf for their normal oil exports and imports, which makes the Red Sea much more important to them. That also makes Saudi Arabia extremely vulnerable to Ansarullah. We have already seen Yemeni forces strike tankers, and now they have demonstrated that they can target important Saudi energy infrastructure as well. If Yemen continues striking Saudi oil installations, refineries, and petrochemical facilities, Saudi Arabia could be pushed to its knees. The same principle applies to the broader American military presence in the region. Many American bases are exposed and poorly protected compared with Iran's underground facilities. The Iranians have spent decades preparing their missile forces, drones, underground bases, and intelligence networks. I don't believe the Americans fully understand the degree to which they are despised across the region. People are increasingly seeing through the propaganda that has been promoted for years. There are large media networks, online channels, and organized information campaigns, but they are becoming less effective. People can see what is happening, and that makes it much easier for Iran to obtain the information it needs. I think the Americans understand that Iran is not going to back down. They may not be very intelligent in the way they are approaching this, but they can see that Iran is neither afraid nor intimidated. If the United States launches a massive attack using everything available to it, Iran will respond with everything it has. That response would have enormous consequences. Iran could target infrastructure throughout the Persian Gulf, and the result would not simply be a military confrontation. Energy prices would rise dramatically, factories would shut down, businesses would suffer, transportation would become increasingly difficult, and the global economy could enter a severe crisis. Iran has already demonstrated that threats do not force it to surrender. During the previous war, Trump repeatedly threatened to destroy Iran, yet Iran continued fighting. Eventually, the United States moved from demanding unconditional surrender to accepting an Iranian proposal. So why would Iran be intimidated now? And the situation has changed. Iran has learned from previous conflicts, and Yemen has learned from its own experience. The technology of Yemeni missiles and drones has improved, and the methods used to protect their weapons and underground facilities have also developed. I believe many of the lessons Iran has learned have been shared with Yemen. The United States is therefore facing two powerful forces at the same time, Iran and Yemen. It has already failed against Yemen in the past, and it has failed to achieve its objectives against Iran. At the same time, the Iraqi resistance remains a major force that has not fully entered the conflict. If Yemen is engaged, Iran is engaged, and Iraq becomes engaged, what can the Americans or the Gulf monarchies actually do? Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the Emirates cannot withstand such a situation indefinitely. The smart decision would be for Washington to back down and end the conflict. But the problem is that the people running Washington do not appear willing to do that. If the United States decides to carry out a ground operation, that is actually the kind of war the Iranians are prepared for. During the previous conflict, the Iranians wanted a land invasion because they believed it would ultimately lead to a decisive American defeat. Iran has spent decades preparing for this possibility. Its underground missile bases and military facilities were built precisely because the country understands the danger of American attacks. If American forces were to occupy an island such as Karg Island, take control of other islands, or establish themselves on part of the Iranian mainland, Iranian ground forces would respond. Iranian forces include specialized units with their own drones and rockets. They could strike American troops directly from the Iranian mainland and from positions along the coast. A land operation would also create enormous logistical problems for the Americans. The heat and humidity of the Persian Gulf would make it extremely difficult to maintain troops and equipment. Supplying soldiers with water, keeping equipment functioning, and sustaining a large military force in that environment would be a tremendous challenge. A major land offensive would therefore be extremely difficult to sustain. The Americans would eventually have to retreat after weeks or months because the operation would become unsustainable. The Iranians do not want this because they enjoy war. They believe a ground invasion could produce an ultimate defeat for the United States and make American public opinion turn decisively against the war. That could eventually force Washington to end the conflict. If the United States instead chooses massive attacks against Iranian infrastructure without launching a ground invasion, Iran would respond by destroying infrastructure across the region. The consequences for the American economy would be enormous, because energy prices would rise dramatically. Factories would shut down, businesses would suffer, transportation would become more expensive, and the entire economic system could be destabilized. And people in the United States would know who was responsible. They would blame the Trump administration, the Israeli regime, and the political elites who pushed the war. The consequences would extend far beyond the Middle East. The crisis would spread across Asia, Europe, Africa, and Latin America, but in the United States, the public would know that their own government had created the disaster. They would understand that the Trump administration and the Israeli regime had pushed the country into a war that damaged the American economy itself. This is why I believe the current strategy is ultimately destroying the Israeli regime rather than strengthening it. By weakening the United States and its proxies in the Persian Gulf, they are not making themselves stronger, they are making the resistance stronger. Yemen is a perfect example. Its missile bases are underground just like Iran's, and its mountainous geography makes those facilities extremely difficult to destroy. The same applies to Iran. The United States has repeatedly attacked Iranian military infrastructure, yet it has failed to destroy the country's underground missile bases and drone facilities. That raises an important question about claims that Iran's underground nuclear facilities were completely destroyed. If the Americans could not destroy the underground missile bases, why should we automatically believe that they successfully destroyed deeply buried nuclear facilities? The same engineers who designed Iran's military underground infrastructure were involved in protecting other strategic facilities. It is entirely possible that the nuclear sites were protected even more carefully. Iran has also made its position very clear. If the Americans attack critical Iranian facilities, Iran will retaliate. And the countries that have enabled the war could face severe consequences as well. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the Emirates, Oman, and possibly Jordan have all been warned that their infrastructure could become vulnerable if they continue facilitating attacks against Iran. Iran is not going to be intimidated. It will continue responding to attacks, and the resistance across the region will continue to grow stronger. The United States and its allies are fighting on multiple fronts, while Iran, Yemen, Iraq, and the wider resistance are increasingly coordinating their capabilities. The West has created a catastrophe for itself on multiple fronts. It may destroy individual targets and kill people, but that does not mean it can win the war. Ultimately, I believe the United States and its allies are moving toward defeat, rather than victory.